Here is a popular Excel scenario question for you. We have a dataset that has 4 columns: product, region, month and sales. You have to highlight the entire row based on the below criteria. If the sales for that particular row is greater than the average sales of that product across all months and regions, then it should be green. For example, here the average sales for product 1 is 66. So 4, 5, 6 should be highlighted in green. And for the other rows where the sales is below average, it should be highlighted in red. This is how the final output should look like. A quick hint, you can use the concept of absolute and relative reference in Excel along with average if and formula based conditional formatting to solve this problem. Let's look at a solution to this problem. As I've suggested in my previous videos as well, if you are new to something or in the learning phase, it's better to solve that problem in your mind first or on a piece of paper before you start implementing it actually. By following this approach, at least I feel that I have improved a little bit as far as my problem solving capability is concerned. So here we need to highlight the rows based on the sales. If the sales is greater than the average sales of the product, highlight it as green, otherwise red. Let's think it through. So first we need to calculate the average sales of the product. For example, here for product 1, the average sales is 66. So first we have to calculate the product wise average sales. For product 1 we know it's 66. Then we need to do a comparison. For example, for this particular row, if 56 is greater than 66, clearly that is not the case. So this particular row should be highlighted as red. And eventually in our third step, we will apply the conditional formatting. So it's a 3-step process. You calculate the product wise average, you do a comparison and you apply the conditional formatting. Let's see how can we calculate product wise average sales. If you understand the usage of the function average if, and if you understand the concept of relative and absolute referencing, it's going to be very easy for you. If you do not understand these two logics, do not worry. We are going to talk about them in this video. So let's look at the average function first. So the average function allows us to calculate the average of a range, right? I selected this particular range, I used the average function and it gave me the average. But I do not want this. I want this average function to be calculated on the basis of this column or this product column. For example, if I look at it, it's selecting all the rows, but for product 1, I essentially only wanted these rows to be selected. So I'll have to tell Excel explicitly to do my average based on this particular column and its value. So for this, we are going to use something called average if. And if you look at the definition of this, it says it finds average for the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. What exactly that means, we'll look at it in a moment. So this average if takes 3 parameters. First, it takes the range. Okay. So this is the range where we want to do our comparison or check. Then we specify the criteria. So for this particular row, essentially what we are telling Excel that look for product 1 in all of these rows, and only where you find product 1, only for those rows or only for those cells, do the average from this particular column. So let me repeat this real quick. First, we gave the row where we want our search to happen. Then we gave the criteria. So we are telling Excel that in these rows, only if the column or only if this cell has value as product 1, then select those rows. That means select these rows and take the average. So here we got the right value. Okay. So this was the average if part. Let's talk about the other concept I was mentioning earlier, which is the absolute and relative referencing. So if I copy this formula to the next row, look what happened. The average value changed. Both of these rows have product 1. So the average should have been same. Why did it change? Let's look at it. So I'm going to double click here. You see this particular range shifted. When I copied the formula to the next cell, Excel automatically moved the rows or automatically moved the range to the next row. We do not want that, which is why I'm going to write this formula again. I'm going to write average if, and this time I'm going to make my range absolute. Okay, function F4. Then I need product as my criteria. Again, I do not want this sales range to change. I'm going to make this function F4 again. Now we will see a problem with this in a moment, but I do not want to talk about it right now. Okay. If you look at it, we got the value 66, and if I propagate it below, I got the same value. So now if you look at it, we have the same value 66 for all the product 1. Similarly for product 2 and product 3, the average looks correct. So the average if function is working as expected. Now let's look at the comparison. If you look at the comparison, this part it's working correctly. The sales is less than the average, which is why it's false. Here the sales is greater than the average, which is why it's true. Now let's merge these formulas into a single cell. Okay. Instead of having the comparison in the next cell, I'm going to do the comparison here itself in this column. So here what we are doing, we are comparing this cell with the output of our formula. So let's do that here itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify if this is greater than this, then. So now I have done the average and comparison both here itself. So I do not need this part. I've done both part here itself. Okay. Now our formula is ready. All we need to do is copy this formula from here and apply conditional formatting using this formula. Okay. I'm going to press escape. I'm going to select the range where I want to apply conditional formatting. I'll go to conditional formatting, click on new rule. I'll select use a formula. I'll press equals to. I'll specify my condition. I'll go to format. I'll choose the color green. I'll choose OK and I'll click OK. Now this will not work perfectly. If you can pause the video right now and tell me why and what the problem is, you understand the concept of absolute and relative referencing perfectly. If you do not, I'll show that in a moment. So if you look at it, this particular column right here is functioning perfectly, but the conditional formatting was not applied on rest of the 3 columns. And here we will discuss the final important concept. Since we want all the columns of a particular row to be formatted, we need to make sure if we copy and paste our formula on any other column of the same row, it should give the same result. That did not happen. Why is that? Let's look at what happened here. So here, what we are doing, we were calculating the average using this particular range, and finally we were comparing with this value. When we copied the value or the formula to other cell, let's look at what happened. Now the criteria has also shifted. We are trying to search north in this range, which is not correct. We should be looking for product 1. Also, instead of comparing the sales from this cell, we are comparing with the next column. So our referencing of the formula is not working correctly. So let's see what should have happened in this formula. We always need to make sure that when we are doing the criteria comparison, it should not matter in which column we paste our formula. It should always refer the column which has the product info, in our case the column F. The rows should change when we move to the below rows, but the column F, the criteria or product column, should be absolute. So we are going to make the column part absolute. We are going to add a dollar here. Similarly, for the sales comparison part, we need to make sure the comparison always happens with the sales column, which is our I column. Rows will change, but the column should not change. So let's make this column part absolute as well. Remember this golden rule. When you are talking about conditional formatting using formulas in Excel, this single formula should work perfectly for the entire range. It does not matter if your range has 10,000 rows or 50 columns. The formula you write, that should work for every single cell in that range. I'm going to reapply this formula that I just wrote. It did not change, which indicates that the formula is correct. I'll copy this formula in another column and it still did not change. I can go ahead and copy this formula in any column of these rows and it should work perfectly. So one formula should work for the entire range. If your formula is not working, you may want to look at fixing your referencing. Now I'll copy this formula again. I'll press escape. I'll select the range one more time. Let's clear the conditional formatting from this range. Now we will reapply the conditional formatting, this time with the new correct formula. Let's specify equals to and we will paste the formula. I'll format the color green and now let's click OK. And we got the right result now. In order to get the red color, let's reapply the conditional formatting on the same range one more time. I'll click on formula equals to and now we will paste the same formula with one minor change. Instead of greater than, let's change this to less than, or you can also have less than or equals to. Let's highlight this with red color. Let's choose this one and we are done. We can go ahead and delete these column values. They do not matter because we have created a formula that is going to hold true for this range always. That's the idea. Create a formula that works for each cell of the entire range. Hopefully now you have understood average if and absolute referencing as well. If there is still some confusion, post your questions in the comment section and I'll be happy to help. I'll also be posting this file in GitHub. You can access it from there. Thanks a lot guys for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one.